The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
One of the biggest news weekends in a long time, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has fired Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe just days before he would have qualified for a pension as a longtime government employee. The official reason given is that an internal FBI office determined that McCabe wasn't forthcoming during an interview with the Justice Department's Inspector General, that McCabe made an unauthorized disclosure to the media, and that when speaking under oath, McCabe lacked candor. Donald Trump, the president, cheerleading the firing, immediately taking to Twitter and saying, Andrew McCabe fired. A great day for the hardworking men and women of the FBI, a great day for democracy. Sanctimonious James Comey was his boss and made McCabe look like a choir boy. He knew all about the lies and corruption going on at the highest levels of the FBI. McCabe is not mincing words. He's being super clear about what he thinks motivated this firing, the Russia investigation, in a statement saying they have every reason to believe that I could end up being a significant witness in whatever the special counsel comes up with. And so they are trying to create this counter narrative that I am not someone who can be believed or trusted. Now, even if you believe that what Andrew McCabe did, right, lacking candor in a public, in testimony, making an unauthorized disclosure, if you believe that stuff is a problem, and you may, the idea that this isn't political is absurd, right? Because Kellyanne Conway has violated the Hatch Act at minimum once or twice, if not more, no repercussions whatsoever. They had a serial wife beater who couldn't get a security clearance working at the White House for months in Rob Porter. They found out and they still didn't do anything until the pressure from the public became too great. They have cabinet secretaries out spending inappropriately on private airfare, first-class flights, $30,000 dining tables. But this is the guy that needs to be fired days before qualifying for his pension. And it's not even the broader administration hypocrisy, right? What about the laughable, specific double standard of Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, firing anyone for lacking candor? It's totally comical after his string of I don't remember anything ever, but yet still managing to lie and or forget, depending on who you believe, about his various meetings with Russian individuals. This is all meant, as Andrew McCabe is saying, to paint the FBI broadly, and specifically James Comey and Andrew McCabe, as not trustworthy. And the goal is to preemptively discredit Robert Mueller's investigation. Sessions was totally dishonest when he told senators that he had no communications with Russians. And then his explanations for why he didn't originally just tell the truth about that are even more ridiculous. And Trump has had his eye on getting rid of McCabe for a long time. Remember when Trump asked McCabe during that conversation some time ago who he voted for when they met? What this means is that Robert Mueller is getting very close, and the dominoes are going to start falling, and the picture is clearer every day. Because you might remember, and I'm not patting myself on the back for this, many people said it, when Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee put out a memo saying, we're done investigating, there was no collusion, Democrats said, wait, hold on, we weren't even consulted about this. We're on the Intel Committee. We don't think we're done. Never mind that we've even spoken to everybody we want to speak to. It was very clear that they were starting to panic, and now we're starting to see why. McCabe could have retired yesterday, Sunday, after more than 20 years of working for the FBI, and now his pension is at risk. There's one bit of interesting news, not to divert too much from the main storyline, but on the pension thing, there's a Democratic lawmaker who's offered to hire McCabe for a few days to get his time in service long enough to get that full pension. It's Congressman Mark Pocan, who tweeted, Andrew, call me. I could use a good 2-day report on the biggest crime families in Washington, D.C. And also back on Twitter as a result of this firing of Andrew McCabe is FBI Director James Comey, who tweeted that he will soon be talking, saying, quote, "Mr. President, the American people will hear my story very soon, and they can judge for themselves who is honorable and who is not." Consider for a moment that all three people that James Comey talked to about his conversations with Donald Trump as FBI director have been fired. Andrew McCabe being number three. Comey told his chief of staff, James Rybicki, about his conversations with Trump. He told the FBI general counsel, James Baker, about his conversations with Trump. And he told Andrew McCabe, the deputy FBI director, about his conversations with Trump. And all three have been fired. This is not normal. I do not believe in coincidences like this. And you even have a Republican senator, one that the right loves to hate, but a Republican senator nonetheless, Lindsey Graham, says it's gone too far, and he wants the Senate to hold hearings about this firing. He said yesterday on CNN's State of the Union, "I think we owe it to the average American to have a hearing in the Judiciary Committee where Attorney General Jeff Sessions come forward with whatever documentation he has about the firing and give Mr. McCabe the chance to defend himself. I believe when it comes to this issue, we need as much transparency as possible to make sure it wasn't politically motivated." Beautiful statement. I agree with it completely. But now we actually have to make sure that it happens, because Lindsey Graham has called for hearings before, or at least has said colloquially that something needs to be looked into in a nonpartisan way or a bipartisan way. And it just doesn't happen. And we know that in the current political climate, that's easier said than done. So very, very clear that this was not a firing merely for the reasons stated. This is part of a bigger picture to get in the way. Now, I'm stopping short of using the legal term obstruction of justice because that's for someone else to decide, maybe Robert Mueller or someone else. But this is certainly an attempt to get in the way of Robert Mueller's investigation, and we'll see if they get away with it. Now, let's talk more specifically about what Donald Trump has been saying in reaction to what we may soon learn from fired Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe. The apoplexy and the bold-faced dishonesty from the Trump administration about the firing of Andrew McCabe is growing exponentially. Shortly after the Attorney General Jeff Sessions fired Andrew McCabe, the Associated Press reported, hey, you know what? McCabe kept memos about his conversation with Donald Trump. And not only did he keep them, not only did he make those memos and write them down, he's already turned them over to Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. Now, of course, this is totally unsurprising, right? Any good FBI official would immediately make notes after meetings with someone like the President of the United States, particularly if they found some of what took place during those meetings to be unusual. It's what fired FBI Director James Comey did. And once again, Trump goes on the attack without any evidence whatsoever, accuses Andrew McCabe of fabricating the memos, saying we should be maybe calling them fake memos. And I'm going to put up Donald Trump's tweet about this for you, which tells us so much about how little Trump is able to think critically about anything. Trump tweeting, so remember, this is in response to the news that Andrew McCabe has memos about his conversations with Trump. Trump says, spent very little time with Andrew McCabe, but he never took notes when he was with me. I don't believe he made memos except to help his own agenda, probably at a later date. Same with lying James Comey. Can we call them fake memos? The argument from Trump is, listen, I never saw him writing down what I was saying when he was with me, so he couldn't possibly have remembered the conversation after the fact, right? Just because Trump forgets every conversation he's had within 5 minutes doesn't mean everybody else does. And by the same logic, if Trump didn't take notes about his meetings with Andrew McCabe, how can we even trust that Trump correctly remembers that McCabe didn't take notes? Because, hey, listen, Trump doesn't have notes of his own either. If Trump questions the memos from Andrew McCabe, he has to question every single police report in the history of the United States about everything, since those are written after the incident based on the recollection of police officers. Trump seems to imagine that for any recollection, note, or memo to be accurate, the person has to be effectively transcribing the conversation as it's taking place. There's one other possibility, which is that because Trump lies about so much after the fact, he also assumes everybody else must be lying too, and assumes that Andrew McCabe's memos must also be based on lies. Not to mention that if you believe that someone cannot later recall what it is that they saw, the Nunes memo by definition is false, since it is all Devin Nunes reporting what people on his committee claim to recollect about documents that they saw. So I go back here to James Comey's famous line, "Lordy, I hope there are tapes." Or I think that was James Comey.
That was it, yeah.
Right? It was Comey.
Do you think McCabe will release his own memos? Because that would put him in danger. Donald Trump would then call him a leaker, just like he called James Comey a leaker.
I don't think he has to at this point. I think that Robert Mueller has them, and I think that they will be, if there is anything worthy of further investigation in McCabe's memoranda, that now that Robert Mueller has it, he's going to be able to use that as part of his investigation. And that, I think, is why there is just total unmitigated, unfettered panic from Donald Trump, right? Look at Trump's Twitter feed from the last 72 hours, and what you see is fear, panic, and chaos. I was, as I read some of these articles yesterday, I was reminded that I recently read Sun Tzu's The Art of War for the first time. Very short book, interesting book. And one of the chapters talks about how it's very dangerous and it creates a sort of unpredictable reality when you back an enemy or an army into a corner. The quote is, "When you surround an army, leave an outlet free. Do not press a desperate foe too hard." And I believe that now that Trump is backed into a corner, that he may become even more erratic. The notion that we often have of, listen, Trump's done A, B, C, D, and E, but he would never go so far as to do F. That's too crazy. Even Trump wouldn't do it. As the desperation increases, there's very little left that these people wouldn't do.
It's like The Art of War meets The Art of the Deal.
Yes, very,
Donald
very.
Trump's book.
Sure, why not? So we'll see. We'll follow this. We will see what ultimately happens with it. But the memos that Andrew McCabe has are of particular interest to me, and hopefully they are also of interest to Robert Mueller. It appears that they are, and he has them in his hands. Send me your thoughts. So much news. This is only the tip of it happening over the last 72 hours. I'm on Twitter at @dpacman, and the show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. We'll take a break and be back right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Lisa Camus. Lisa, thank you so much for signing up at davidpakman.com/membership. This is viewer and listener supported media. I also want to thank today's longtime, very, very long time, sustaining member of the day, Keith Nelson, who has been with us since 2011. Thanks to both of you, Lisa and Keith. You can join them at davidpakman.com/membership. We've got a 40% off coupon code available if you want it, which is Vote Soon 18. You can also get a free David Pakman Show bumper sticker available both in white and black. If you get a yearly membership, just get in touch after you sign up and say, "Hey, David, I want the black one or the white one, and here's my address." And we will get it out to you. Very exciting. A lot of these going out, and I anticipate more segments soon about further Alex Jones bumper stickers covered up by David Pakman Show bumper stickers, which is becoming a trend. I would not be shocked if Alex Jones himself comments on it sometime soon. Sort of lost between the news of Rex Tillerson's firing and the firing of Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe was the request, and not really a request, the subpoena from Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller of the Trump Organization. And of course, the Trump Organization is not the Trump campaign. The Trump Organization is Trump's business entity. And specifically, Robert Mueller subpoenaed documents, a number of documents, including some related to Russia. Now, this is relevant for two different reasons. Before I get to the one about the investigation, let's talk about the Mueller part of this. You might remember that back in July of 2017, Donald Trump was asked by New York Times reporters whether, if Robert Mueller starts to look at his personal finances, his family's finances unrelated to Russia, whether that would signify sort of the crossing of a red line. And Trump said that it would. So let's review that transcript from the New York Times, where Trump was asked, last thing, if Mueller was looking at your finances and your family finances unrelated to Russia, Is that a red line? And Maggie Haberman added, would that be a breach of what his actual charge is? And Trump said, I would say, yeah, I would say yes. By the way, I would say, I mean, it's possible there's a condo or something. So, I sell a lot of condo units and somebody from Russia buys a condo, who knows? And then he goes on and on with his unintelligible rants. But the point here is that Trump made very clear that if Robert Mueller went beyond whatever Trump thought his scope should be at the time, into Trump's family finances, which of course mostly are tied up in the Trump organization, that would be a red line. Robert Mueller has now subpoenaed documents from the Trump organization, some of which are related to Russia, according to two people briefed about this, some of which presumably might be related more generally to the business and financial activities of Trump's business. This is notable in part because, number one, it's the first time that we know of during the Russia investigation where Mueller is demanding Trump business records, and that gets us another half step or full step closer to Donald Trump personally, which seems to be happening every week. But the more notable part of it, and I haven't seen this discussed as much, is that there is a subpoena, right? All along, what Trump's lawyers have said is, we believe there's nothing here and we want this to end, but we're cooperating with Mueller and we are responding to all of the requests that we get from Robert Mueller. Responding to requests doesn't necessarily mean that they're giving Mueller the documents that he asks for. And that's what raises the question about the need for a subpoena. If you've given a subpoena to the Trump lawyers for these documents, to me, it means one of two things. One, Mueller already asked for the documents and didn't get them, so now he's subpoenaing the documents. Or he has, for some reason, knowledge that requesting the documents alone isn't going to get them, because the act of sending a subpoena is newsworthy in and of itself, right? So number one, red line possibly crossed. We've got McCabe fired, Comey fired. Isn't firing Mueller the next step, or at least trying to? That's number one. And number two, why is it that a subpoena was even necessary here? And I was just thinking how funny it was, thinking back to that July 2017 interview. When Trump says it would be a red line to look into my personal finances, isn't that basically saying, look at my personal finances? It's like if someone says, officer, I definitely don't know anything about illegal drugs, but if I did know something about it, I absolutely would not have the illegal drugs in my glove compartment. So definitely no need to look there at all. It's calling attention to where it is that Robert Mueller should be focusing his energy. And if there is one good piece of information related to the possible firing of Mueller, it's that even though we learned a few days ago that this subpoena was served to Trump, it actually is from weeks ago. So I'm sort of hoping that the fact that the subpoena is actually several weeks old means Donald Trump is not going to fire Robert Mueller, since presumably he would have already done that when he learned of the subpoena. Again, unless Trump's lawyers are keeping news of the subpoena from Trump, which I can't imagine they are. I don't want to dwell on this aspect of the story too much because there's just been so much Trump-Russia stuff in the last 72 hours. But we're in a situation where a subpoena of Trump business documents is only ranking like 4th or 5th in the major breaking stories of the last 72 to 96 hours. The big picture is we are rapidly heading towards a major confrontation on this issue. And quite frankly, I personally can't wait for that to happen. Let's go to Austin, Texas, the one city in Texas that I have ever visited, other than airports, I guess. There's a serial bomber wreaking havoc in Austin, Texas. And this started a little over 2 weeks ago. March 2nd was the first bombing. A package, I guess the USPS calls it a parcel, blew up when a 39-year-old named Anthony Stephen House was killed picking up a package bomb. March 12th, 2 more packages explode within just a few hours of each other. The first one killed 17-year-old celloist, I believe he was, Draylen Mason, and also injured a woman. The second injured a 75-year-old Hispanic woman. And now yesterday, the fourth of these bombs injured 2 people. There is the idea that race may be a factor here because the first 3 bombings injured or killed Black or Hispanic people exclusively. I believe that's right. The most recent bomb from yesterday used a tripwire mechanism and injured white people. And that seems to be sort of a shift in a different direction in terms of the tactics of the bomber, presuming that this is the same individual. And police so far haven't been definitive about that, but they're saying that certainly the pattern seems to point in that direction. The source of the bombs is not clear, causing total chaos in Austin. Police are telling people in entire neighborhoods to stay home near where the bomb went off. School buses won't be going to the same neighborhood today, and it's unclear when school bus service is going to resume. And there's now a $100,000 reward and a $15,000 reward for any leads that result in the eventual conviction of the shooter. Police also asking, or the bomber rather, police also asking the bomber to get in touch with them. And that, I read online that some people are saying, why are the police saying, give us a call? That never happens. It's actually something more common than you might imagine. Oftentimes, these bombers, hostage takers, barricaders, they want communication with others. And the tactic of saying, we're ready to talk. We want to talk to you. We want to figure out what it is that's driving you to do this. It can actually be more effective than you can imagine. And of course, no shortage of stupidity triggered by these bombings. One example, the Regents School of Austin said that today they were going to be having a 2-hour delay for the start of school. It's a private Christian school. And the statement they put out says, quote, Christians know that what man intends for evil, God will use for his glory. Please remind your children that our Lord is now and continues to be in control, despite what we see or hear. Although this tragic event hits close to our community, let us be resolved in what and who we look to in times as this. Could you imagine a more meaningless statement? Because if God was controlling everything, wouldn't he just have prevented the bombings in the first place? Oh, well, God works in mysterious ways, right? And it's not just nutty religious talk, it's also conspiracy theories. When a bombing takes place in the backyard of InfoWars' Alex Jones, you can expect conspiracy theories, and there are a ton. Alex Jones himself suggesting that the racial motivation here, the apparent racial motivation, might be a false flag with the goal of starting a race war, and that maybe Antifa is behind the entire thing. Here's Alex Jones losing his mind.
What do you make of this? Well, let me just make this statement. Is Antifa behind the third bombing? Here's the question. Is Antifa behind the now third bombing in Austin, Texas? They're violent. They call for violence. They call for attacking gentrification, any old white people moving in to East Austin. And you have 3 bombings that have happened. They also say old Hispanics or old blacks. If you're not from the neighborhood, you're not wanted. Right. I'm just saying I think that they should be investigated because they are a terror group. They're listed as a terror group. They call for violence.
Yeah, listen, I have no actual reason to think Antifa has anything to do with this, but definitely investigate Antifa. Then Mike Cernovich, who has previously attacked me, also tweeting a few days ago that it's too soon to know what's happening in Austin, Texas, but it's worth noting that bombs are traditionally a left-wing Antifa method of terrorism. And then here's one more clip, a so-called reporter for InfoWars suggesting that the bombings in Austin, Texas might be tied to Muslim London Mayor Sadiq Khan apparently visiting Austin, Texas. I can't even understand this one.
Anders is out here. It just kind of becomes a hub for stuff. Sadiq Khan will be around. Yeah, Oh, you know what? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. When did Sadiq Khan get to Austin, Texas? Is Sadiq Khan in Austin, Texas right now?
Maybe today, maybe tomorrow.
We're going to have to look into that because Sadiq Khan said that when he's the mayor of a city, terrorism is part and parcel. So then he arrives in Austin, and then you have 2 explosions. So I'm just reporting on things that happen here.
He's just making the report. Nice, neat little conspiracy there, huh? Can't really make stuff up on that one. Could be. Listen, I don't know whether Sadiq Khan is here, but he might be here. And, well, there you go. That's something we've absolutely got to look into, isn't it?
I like how the cameraman was saying all this stuff. It's like he's auditioning for a reporter's job.
Wait, who's the cameraman?
The guy that was talking in the background. You didn't hear that? During that little exchange, he was offering all of these
ideas. Oh, no, I didn't.
I
couldn't even hear him.
Oh, yeah, it was like a little back
I only heard
That's where he was getting his ideas from.
Owen Schroyer there, the correspondent, was the only one I heard there. Yeah, it's a family affair over there at InfoWars. Everybody's saying, hey, listen, this couldn't possibly be what it most appears to be. It must be something either related to a Muslim mayor or a so-called left-wing anti-fascist group, because everything is a false flag. In all seriousness, this is absolutely terrorizing people in Austin. I have friends in Austin who don't even live near where this has been going on. And everybody's just afraid of packages. You get a package, you don't know what to do. It could be a package that potentially at least has some kind of bomb that you're going to trigger by opening it. So hopefully this will all come to a resolution soon with no more violence and injury. And it is being discussed on our subreddit, which you can access at davidpakman.com/REDDIT.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined today by Bill Press. He's host of the Bill Press Show, author of the new book From the Left, A Life in the Crossfire. Bill, the book is super interesting. I think a lot of people might be surprised, or at least if not surprised, interested in your upbringing. I mean, your early life was one pretty heavily steeped in the Catholic Church, right? I think a lot of people probably don't know that. Was your family Catholic growing up?
My family was Catholic. My mother was a Protestant, but my father was Catholic. My grandmother was a Catholic. And, you know, one of the rules in those days was if you married a non-Catholic, the kids still had to be raised Catholics. And so we were. I mean, church every Sunday, altar boy, Catholic boys, high school. And that was very, very much a part of our family. So much so that when I graduated from high school, I even thought at the time I had a vocation for the priesthood, and I joined the seminary and spent a solid 10 years of my life studying for the priesthood.
And you, I mean, not only was your family, not only were you raised Catholic, but your family was pretty conservative. How did your politics end up so different? You know,
David, you're right. I grew up it was a small town in Delaware City. All of my family were Republicans. If I had stayed there, I think I'd be a Trump voter today, right? God forbid. But I always say I became a Democrat because my parents were Republicans. I think I sort of rebelled, even at that time, against what I was supposed to think and how I was supposed to act. But I also very early on sort of got the sense that, which I still believe, that the Democratic Party was a party that was on the side of the little guy and the middle class, and not the Republican Party.
And you moved away politically from where your family was, but do you still consider yourself Catholic, religious, or did that change as well?
Politically, a long way, and I'm sure we'll get more into that. No, I would still say, first of all, I don't go to church anymore. I find organized religion not part of my life, and even skeptical about any organized religion. I still think I maintain a basic set of faith values from those days that I try to live by, and I try to make decisions following. The great Tim Russert once called me a Sermon on the Mount Catholic, and I kind of wear that as a badge of honor. So I try to live up to those principles, but to me that doesn't include the necessity of showing up every Sunday morning in a Catholic church.
Why do you think sort of in total Americans have been moving away from not only religion as sort of church membership, but also from religious belief? What do you think is driving that?
Well, I think a certain amount of it is materialism, frankly. It is consumerism. There is that. I also think it's more and more, and certainly in my case, that people find organized religion or the pap that they're delivered on a regular basis on a Sunday in sermons, or some of the dictates of organized religion, to be not relevant anymore, not helpful, and maybe even contradictory. Particularly, I think that's true of millennials.
Huh, that's interesting. So, I mean, you would you say that consumerism is more responsible for pulling people out or pushing them out of religion more so than something like scientific knowledge is advanced, the advance of scientific knowledge?
No, I should have added scientific knowledge as part of that. I guess maybe I didn't because I just kind of take it for granted. But you're definitely right. I mean, for some people, it's that skepticism or refusal to accept science that has kept them in their, particularly evangelicals, right, in their lockstep version of Christianity. I think those are all factors, and I think particularly when young people today, they hear somebody say, "Oh, transgender is wrong," or LGBTQ is wrong, right, or a woman has no control of her own body. I mean, they're just not willing to accept that the way people once did from that authority figure that happened to be standing in the pulpit.
Let's talk a little bit about the 2016 election and what's going on now. You supported Bernie Sanders for the nomination in 2016, as did I. You also, at one point, were the chair of the California Democratic Party, so you have a maybe different view of how the DNC, the national DNC, behaved during 2016. Give me your assessment. I mean, what do you think of how the DNC managed the primary in 2016?
I think it was shameful the way they managed the primary in 2016. By the way, I fought. I was chair of the California Democratic Party, David, for 3 years, from '93 to '96.
Yep.
And so that was some time ago. But even at that time, I fought the DNC. Again, from California. I just thought it was Washington trying to dictate everything, a cookie cutter approach in every state. I really fought the fact that Iowa and New Hampshire were first in every year, every 4 years, when they really do not represent the American people, so little diversity. And so I was always sort of never trusted the DNC, but particularly in the 2016 campaign, I think their behavior, they were owned lock, stock, and barrel by the Clinton campaign. It was very, very unfair to Bernie Sanders or anybody else who was trying to contest the nomination. The DNC had a deal with Hillary where they were in the primary when they should have been totally neutral. And let me back up. As state chair of California, one of our rules was we never took a position in the primary, right? We let the Democratic voters decide who their candidate was going to be. In 2016, the DNC decided they were going to coronate Hillary. They made a deal with her without anybody else's knowledge to raise money during the primary. And part of that money went to the DNC, but part of it went right to the Hillary Clinton campaign. As we know, they only scheduled, 10 or 12 debates at the worst possible times on the worst possible nights to protect Hillary and to save her from, and God forbid, she could hold her own, but they sort of felt that they had to protect her from debating Bernie or Martin O'Malley or whatever. And then with the superdelegates, there were over 400 DNC superdelegates who pledged for Hillary Clinton, support her at the convention, vote for her at the convention, before she had even declared as president. So it was totally outrageous, and we only found out about it. By the way, Bernie said that, I said it, I believed it. We only found out the evidence when the Russians hacked into the DNC emails, John Podesta's emails.
Do you, so I've said before, and I wonder if you agree, I don't necessarily think, I mean, certainly what the DNC did for me is not a legal issue. And even not being an unbiased arbiter of the primary is not objectively wrong to me, as long as you're transparent about it. The problem I have is posturing as an unbiased arbiter of the primary and not being one. If everybody knew the DNC picked someone early on, if we all know that, that's a different story. What do you think?
Absolutely. And by the way, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the chair at the time, lied. I mean, she lied. She said that they had not tilted toward Hillary, but they did. And you're right. David, it's not illegal what they did. I think it's undemocratic. I think it's wrong. You know, the whole. I said at the time that the Republican Party operated more as a democracy in the primary than the Democratic Party did in terms of the process. Right? They have very few superdelegates, and they have to follow what the states, how the voters of the states go. So. Yeah, the DNC just lied to the American people and to the Democratic Party, pretending to be neutral when, in fact, they were just an arm of the Clinton campaign.
You mentioned Russia, and I'm very curious, myself as someone who supported Bernie Sanders in the primary, but believes what the evidence seems to be pointing to when it comes to Russia. I have some concern about a contingent of Bernie supporters who seem to be rejecting everything we learn about Russia because they feel in some way it devalues Bernie's strength and props up or makes Hillary seem like a better candidate. I think the idea being, were it not for Russia, maybe Hillary would have won, which I think we're so far beyond at this point. Can you give me an assessment as a Bernie supporter of sort of where you see the Russia investigation at this point?
Well, first of all, I think I don't know any Bernie people who believe that. If they do, they're dead wrong.
I'll forward you some emails afterwards.
Yeah, okay. But you know what? If they do, they're dead wrong. They are as wrong as Donald Trump is when he refuses to accept the fact of absolute certain Russian attempts to interfere in this election because he thinks it devalues his election, right? And so that's why he's so much against this Mueller investigation. He thinks it undermines his win. Look, I'll tell you where I think the Russian investigation is right now, and I think this is where Donald Trump is totally clueless. This is real. It is serious. It's a criminal investigation on the part of of the Justice Department, on the President of the United States. He is being investigated for at least two things: possible collusion with the Russians, we don't know for sure yet, and possible obstruction of justice, which I think is pretty evident in the firing of James Comey and now maybe the firing of Andy McCabe. And the other thing we know is Mueller is a serious man. He's got an incredibly gifted team of prosecutors, an experienced team of prosecutors with him. And this investigation, no matter what Donald Trump says, is going to end when Robert Mueller says it's over, when he finishes his investigation, and then we'll see his final report. It's not going to end before, unless Donald Trump were to fire Robert Mueller or try to have him fired, which I think would be, as Lindsey Graham said, a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, I don't disagree. In the last couple of minutes we have, I'm curious about, as a talk radio veteran, we've seen for a very long period of time that the right does better on broadcast talk radio, not talking about online, not talking about any platform, but broadcast talk radio. I have some ideas as to why that is. What do you think has led to this long time domination of the talk radio airwaves by the right?
You're kind enough to mention my latest book, which is From the Left, Life in the Crossfire. I actually wrote an earlier book called Toxic Talk, where a few years ago, where I looked at this. I think there's several factors, and you and I have both struggled against them, right? Or I should say, you and I have both survived and thrived.
Right.
The factors, right? One is the medium of talk radio lends to old, angry white men who get their fix, and that's all they want. And they're replenished by that, where those of us progressives, I think, are more open-minded and like to hear different points of view and switch around the dial and try different people. The Republicans never do that. Secondly, ownership.
Yep.
Conservatives were very smart. They went out, they bought up the networks, they bought up the stations, they recruited talent, they trained the talent, they put their money into that talent, and they kept progressives off the air on many, many terrestrial stations. The numbers are overwhelming. At one time, there were 2,000 news talk stations in the country, and maximum 100 progressive talk radio stations. So you can't compete if they won't let you on the air, and the owners won't let progressive voices on the air. So it's online, and it's the internet, and it's free speech TV, where I think we are really still able to make a difference and have our voices be heard.
Yeah, and I would even add to that structurally, some right-wing arguments on issues just lend themselves to 30, 60, and 120-second sound bites, right? All abortion is murder. That's super simple. The position on the left isn't just the opposite. It's, well, it's more complicated than that, and you have to sort of determine up to which point in you've already kind of lost, right? By their very structure, some of these right-wing positions are just better for talk radio.
Yeah, absolutely. Or that Barack Obama is going to take away all your guns. Right.
Sure.
Okay. So then you get into what is sensible gun safety measures, and you lose the extremists, if you will.
The book is From the Left: A Life in the Crossfire. We've been speaking with the book's author and host of the Bill Press Show. Bill Press, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Hey, David, great to join you. I'm a big fan. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So we already know that adult film actress Stormy Daniels was paid $130,000 in hush money. She also signed a non-disclosure agreement for an alleged affair with Donald Trump that took place, as far as we knew, before Trump was president of the United States, right? When Trump was a private citizen, and that's something that his defenders have been focusing on. This is stuff that Trump allegedly did while he was a private citizen. But now we're hearing more from Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, who appeared in a number of CNN interviews recently, one with Jake Tapper. And he's now alleging a lot of different stuff, all of which individually would be totally blockbuster. The first allegation being that some of these incidents between Stormy Daniels and President Donald Trump took place while Donald Trump was president, which now is painting a drastically different scenario and situation. Here's clip number one.
Obviously a big debate about how relevant an extramarital affair when Donald Trump was a private citizen, an alleged extramarital affair, is to the job he's doing right now. Is there anything in the litany of accusations, you would call them facts, that surround this case that happened while Donald Trump was president?
Yes.
Can you go any further than that?
No.
And to those who say, hey, this is just an alleged affair back when Donald Trump was a private citizen, who cares? You would say?
It's all about the cover-up.
All right. Michael Avenatti, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
The other big piece of news from Stormy Daniels' attorney is that she was physically threatened to not talk about what she knew. That's what Michael Avenatti said to CNN's Chris Cuomo. Let's look at that clip.
What are you alleging was done to your client in terms of pressure to stay quiet?
Well, I'm not alleging anything. I'm stating a fact. And the fact is that my client was physically threatened to stay silent about what she knew about Donald Trump. The details surrounding that, she's going to discuss, I'm sure, on the 60 Minutes interview on March 25. And the American people are going to weigh her veracity.
And the third piece of alleged news is that there are 6 more women with similar stories about Donald Trump, although Avenatti says he's not yet vetted those stories in total. This one's with Anderson Cooper.
Do you find the stories of these other women who you say have come to you are credible, or are there any similarities in terms of circumstances?
Good evening, Anderson. As of tonight, we've been approached by 6 separate women with similar stories to my client. I want to stress that we have not vetted these stories to any great degree. However, the initial consultations, the initial information that we're receiving indicates that there are some striking similarities between their stories and that of my client, Ms. Clifford.
Can you say if any of these women have non-disclosure agreements?
Yes.
They do?
At least 2 of them do.
Can you say, Can you say, is it from the same LLC that Michael Cohen set up for the one with Stormy Daniels?
We don't know yet.
Wow. There's lots of little facts that start to make more sense when you hear this stuff. Like, for example, months ago, I reported to you, the White House is no longer releasing visitor logs. All right. We figured probably has to do with lobbyists hiding the fact that the swamp's not really being drained. Maybe it did. Maybe it had to do with this, that there were people visiting Trump at the White House that they didn't want to be publicly known. It's almost impossible at this point to keep track of all the little details. But what I think is clear is that, listen, Stormy Daniels played a very small role in this administration. Yes, she was at the White House. Yes, she was involved in debriefing the president, but it's not the same type of debriefing that Stephen Bannon was doing when we said he would debrief the president. I get the sense that attorney Michael Avenatti is doing a really good job here of letting Trump and his attorney Michael Cohen dig their own graves. But who does this Avenatti guy think he is? He probably went to some loser fake news school where they teach all sorts of... Oh, wait, Avenatti went to University of Pennsylvania, same as Trump. Well, listen, he didn't go to Wharton. That's the one department at UPenn where the actual smart people go. This really puts the Russia stuff in context for me, right? Trumpists want us to believe that there's just no way Trump could be manipulated by a foreign power that specializes in this stuff. Yet a porn star has him over a barrel, and it's unrealistic that Putin would. We are going to be following this, not because I really care that much about what Stormy Daniels did or didn't do. It's that we care about, as Michael Avenatti said, the legality of the cover-up. As you know, Donald Trump has fired the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, whether it was because of Russia or to protect Jared Kushner. We don't quite know. We might never know. But what we do know is that Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter, who's banned by nepotism laws from having a formal position in the administration, is sitting in for the Secretary of State at an upcoming meeting with the South Korean foreign minister. And the White House is confirming this. The White House is saying, yeah, Ivanka, who, as I told you last week, is still set to earn about $1 million this year from the Trump family business, from which she has not separated herself. She will be meeting with Kang Kyung-hwa of South Korea. Not only does Ivanka Trump not have a formal position in the White House, because she can't, not only does she have business interests in the country of South Korea, from which she still is going to earn money, she doesn't even have a permanent security clearance, presumably because of the problems with Jared Kushner and multiple false SF-86 vetting form submissions. And she is going to be doing something that would typically be the purview of the Secretary of State. In related news, a panel of Bachelor contestants, as well as the Long Island medium, that psychic woman, are going to be filling in for Mike Pompeo, a CIA director, while he goes through the process of becoming separate Secretary of State. How low are we going to go here? Am I being too tough on Ivanka? Like, can we say that because she designed some really nice handbags? Oh, wait a second. No, they actually paid someone else to design the handbags. I might prefer the actual Ivanka handbag designer over Ivanka meet with the South Korean foreign minister. All joking aside, this is probably illegal, okay? There's a piece of law. So we've got the anti-nepotism laws, which say why Ivanka can't have an official position in the government. There's something else called inherently governmental functions, which is 5 U.S. Code 3110 subsection, employment of relatives, which specifically says there are certain government functions that are so intimately related to the public interest that they can only be performed by a government employee. This has to be adjudicated, right? This is subjective. But how can anyone argue that the functions of the Secretary of State are not inherently governmental functions? Ivanka Trump is a private citizen and thus should be forbidden from participating in these functions, and yet she is. And it appears to violate that law. It appears as though there may be other violations, emoluments questions, so much of what's going on here. And part of this, of course, has to do with the broader problem of just unfilled positions in the Trump administration. 2/3 of the top 9 jobs, meaning 6 of the top 9 jobs at the State Department, are currently empty. This is not normal, and I keep going back to this point. The real tragedy of the Trump debacle is that it has made ignorance popular again. okay? It's put a ton of energy behind those who defend lack of knowledge and lack of intellectual curiosity. And it goes way beyond the micro of Ivanka sitting there as Secretary of State, or Trump paying a porn star off, or Trump being the puppet of a foreign government. We can undo a lot of the damage that Trump does. Some of it we won't be able to undo, but it's going to take a long time to recover from the broader idea that speaking like Trump, doing diplomacy or not doing it the way the Trump administration is doing it, the pseudo-intellectualism and anti-intellectualism that I've been talking about for a while now, that has lasting damage. Just look at education around the world. Look at math and science scores from other countries compared to the United States. That is going to be, in my mind, the most long-term destructive impact of the Trump administration. And I don't exactly know how we're going to recover from it. I'm out of time. No voicemail today. It was going to be a good one. It really was, but I'll get to it tomorrow. Fantastic bonus show coming up for you today as well.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.